Okay, this is Ariana Jensen, scenario 3 for naloxone. So I've just been in assessing my client, and their respiratory rate is 6, and they are 3 on the sedation scale. So they have had too much morphine or too much of something, and they need Narcan right away. So I'm going to go to my med cart, look at my orders here. Narcan and naloxone are interchangeable. They are the same drug. So for respiratory rate less than 8 and sedation scale less than 3, I'm going to give 0.1 milligram IV stat. So my orders here, 0.1 milligram IV stat for under 8 respirations and under 3 on sedation scale. So I've got my 0.4 milligram naloxone ampule, which is actually a multi-dose vial in this case. And then I need to make sure I have something to dilute it, a syringe to mix it in, something to pull it up with, something to connect the 2 syringes, and a med label. I also need to make sure I have another flush with me for when I'm going to be giving it. So I've also got my label here, or my, not my label, sorry, my monograph. So it says, if dilution is required, dilute 1 ml, 0.4 milligrams per ml with 9 mils of normal saline for 0.4 milligrams per ml. I've also done my math and figured that out on my own. So 10 mils of total volume in the syringe. There's my calculation. 1 ml of the med in the ampule that I'm drawing up, which is actually multi-dose, but an ampule in real life. And 10 mils of total volume in the syringe, which means I'm going to be needing 9 mils of normal saline to dilute this. All right, part 3. So to get the right dose that I want, which is 0.1 milligrams, I'm going to be taking 2.5 mils of the dose, which means I'm going to be wasting 7.5 mils. So I'm going to get everything prepared. I've got my alcohol swabs here, hand hygiene first, and then doing my first check. So naloxone, which is naloxone, 0.4 milligrams per mil, 1 mil. Here's my math, and it's IV given stat for Evelyn Smith, and here's my documentation, and she hasn't had a dose yet today. So I want to make sure that I'm going to be injecting 1 mil of air into my vial here. So I'm going to cleanse the top. If this was real practice, this would be in a sterile packaging, but it is not. We do not have sterile package syringes at this point. So I'm going to be connecting that on. As dried, it would have been swabbed for 30 seconds. I'm going to take 1 ml of air and inject it into my vial. So now I want to make sure I'm getting 1 ml out of here. Pen in my pocket. Okay, I've got 1 ml of naloxone. I'm going to scoop to recap. And then now I want to put it on this cool little guy right here. So checking my flush, it is normal saline. It does not expire until 2018, and also checking my drug does not expire until 2018. I would have done that before I drew it up. Okay, so now my second check, naloxone, I've got my 1 ml, which is what I needed for my math. It's going to be given stat for IV, and for Evelyn Smith, here's my documentation, hasn't been given yet. Okay, so I wanted 9 mils of normal saline in here. So I'm going to inject 9 mils from my posi flush until I reach a total syringe volume of 10 mils. Got 10 mils, no air bubbles, perfect. So I'm going to just waste the rest of that, and then I'm going to put the dose that I'm not giving in this syringe. So my dose that I want to give is 2.5 mils according to my math here. So I've got 2.5 mils of naloxone in here. I'm going to prepare my med label. So it's for Smith, Evelyn, and she's in 206A. Drug is naloxone, 0.1 milligram IV. 2.5 mils added by me on September 29th. And then the time is 10:17. So now I'm going to be putting that on right away. Not covering up any of the markers. So it's important to know how long to give this over. So looking at my IV monograph, it says I'm going to be giving it over 30 seconds. And naloxone acts immediately, like within 30 seconds. Or within 1 to 2 minutes. All right, so I'm going to disconnect this and then put this on. So, or I could take a sterile blunt fill needle just to make sure that I have something covering the opening of my syringe. So now my final check, I've got my 7.5 mils of wastage. I've got my naloxone, checking to make sure. I know with my dose or with my math that I have to do 2.5 mils. So I've got my 2.5 mils, my 7.5 mils of waste, and then it's going to be an IV stat, and she's had no doses yet today for Evelyn Smith. Here's my documentation. So now I'm going to put in here. So dose, so I'm doing 0.1 milligram. Time, I'm just going to dot it. Date, it's September 29th, 17, or time is going to be, 10:17. And then I'm going to dot the initial, so I need to make sure I take this with me to the bedside. So I also know that I'm giving it over 30 seconds, so I'm keeping that in mind. I have my watch on my pocket here, and I've got a flush in here. I've also got alcohol swabs here. So I would waste that and then put this away before leaving the med card. So that's wasted. Okay, so everything is good. There's all my math. Got my pen with me. So I'm going in, and she has a running IV. So she can't tell me who she is because she is respiratory rate of 6. She's very sedated, nonverbal. So I'm going to check her name against my MAR here. So it's Evelyn Smith, and her date of birth is correct, and that's right personal health number, and she has no known allergies. Okay, so I'm assessing the site, making sure that it's going in properly. She does have a running IV right now. There's no signs of infiltration, no edema, no swelling, no coolness. And so I'm going to go ahead and give this. So I've got my gloves, my alcohol swabs. Okay, so because it's a running IV, I'm not going to check for patency, and the solution is a compatible one. She does have normal saline running, and we did dilute with normal saline according to our monograph. So I'm going to stop the IV so it doesn't beep at me. Fold this over just to make sure. And then I want to swab this for 30 seconds. I'm not going to do it for 30 seconds for time's sake. So now I want to give my Narcan over 30 seconds. So I've got my timer here, and I'm going to be giving it over 30 seconds. Okay, now I need to flush with 1 ml at the same rate, so 1 ml over 30 seconds. So again, swabbing for 30 seconds. I'm not going to swab for 30 seconds in this case. Making sure my seal is broken. Okay. Okay, so 1 ml over 30 seconds. So it's beeping at me because the IV has been stopped. So there's my 1 ml over 30 seconds, and I'm just going to make sure I'm doing a push pause. So doing a little bit and then push, push, just to make sure it's all flushed out of there. Okay, so now everything is good. I'm going to restart the solution, and within a minute she should be waking up. And then I'm going to make sure I take my MAR, and I'm going to sign it. Perfect.